Now, you may be asking yourself, Darby, why'd you skip a month? It's because reading 30 books in 30 days was my entire September reads, and I talked about all those books in that vlog. I don't need to do a wrap up to talk about them again because some of them don't deserve it. So here we are, October and November. We're doing October and November because look at the November stack. There's, I think, 2 or 3 more that are like audiobooks that I listen to, but the stack is very, very small. So November, or this one's October, which we'll talk about first, and then we'll go to November, and it will just be a fun time like usual. So to start off, the October theme was gray, purple, and gray, purple, and orange. Jeez. And then this was my page tracker. I think I did pretty good after having like such a crazy month. And then there's a final page, but I had such a crazy August and September. I was like, October, I was like, I'm not going crazy, I'm just doing what I can. And honestly, some of these are thick boys, so I'm very proud of myself. Now technically, the first 2 I did finish in September, but I counted them towards October, so we'll talk about them. And the first one actually is a reread. I just got in a hankering that I wanted to read something that I already read before, something I already knew, something I loved, something that would feel comforting to me. And I was right, because I talked about this book the first time I read it and I was like, I think this has become a comfort book, and it totally did. And I haven't read any other ones in the series other than this one, but this was a nice refresher so that I can go and read the next one, and it is A Touch of Darkness by Scarlett Sinclair. This was, again, another 4-star. It has some wording that's a bit concerning with the spice scenes. I genuinely like it a lot. I do have a couple issues with it, which is why it's a 4-star, but it is totally comforting. This is a Hades and Persephone retelling in modern times where everybody knows about the gods and they live in New Athens, and Persephone is trying to become a journalist for the New Athens news. I can't recall what they're called off the top of my head right now. And she stumbles into Hades' nightclub with one of her friends and accidentally makes a deal with him, and she has to hide the fact that she's a goddess, even though he already knows. She thinks she's being sneaky, and she's not, and try not to anger him because her mother will come after her. And it's super good. It's a cute romance. The wording is a bit weird. I think she's impaled quite frequently. I can't remember. It's something along those lines. Very strange, very concerning, but I like it a lot. So 4 stars. The next one I also finished in technically September, just because I was like, I would like to get through it a little bit quicker, and I was reading my books a little bit quicker in September because I actually completed it, so I was just kind of finishing the last 200 to 300 pages of this, and that is A Soul of Ash and Blood by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is the 5th book in the From Blood and Ash series, and this is the one where Castile goes back and recounts what happens in the first book from his point of view and what he was doing during the first book. But there's also scenes in here that like kind of continue the story on, but not really. It's not really progressing the story along. It was nothing new, which is why I was just like coasting through it. I didn't really learn anything, so this was actually a 4-star, which is surprising because I love the series. But if I reread this series, I think I will just go through and find all the present chapters and read those instead. And then, like, I think I'll do that right before I read the 6th book when it comes out. I'll go through and read all the present chapters because I feel like those were a little bit more important than the flashbacks. I mean, if you're a romantic, definitely learn something from the flashbacks, but I don't think it added anything. So 4 stars. The next book did add something for me, and that is The Light and the Flame by A Light in the Flame by Jennifer L. Armentrout once again. This one I gave 5 stars to. This is the 3rd book in the kind of spin-off series that she has. I don't recall what it's called now off the top of my head. The series name. The Flesh and Fire series. So this is the 2nd one from the Flesh and Fire series. And I read this prepping because at the end of October, Fire in the Flesh was released, is I think the one. And still to this day I have not finished it. So I had other priorities, which is fine. I will finish it in January of 2024. But the cliffhanger of this made me start that one immediately. And now that like the end of the drama happened, I'm kind of good. But this was really good. I love it. I love Sarah. I love Nyktos. Oh my god. I actually think this is better than the other series. Like, I know you're not supposed to say that, but I think once I'm done all of it, I will reread this trilogy and then I will read that one when the 6th book comes out, like all in order, kind of like timeline wise, and I feel like it would make a lot more sense, especially the War of Two Queens. There was a lot of history stuff that you learn in that one that I'm still confused about this world and this universe, so once I'm done with this, I think I'll even just reread the War of Two Queens because it's great. I also want to reread, I think it's the second one or the third one in the From Blood and Ash, because that's where they see Sarah and Nyktos. And I want to relive that again. Number 5. Oh, and I said The Light and the Flame was 5 stars. This next book is also 5 stars, and it is Thunderhead by Neil Shusterman. This started off awesome. Like, so awesome. And I love this world, and I'm always immediately sucked in. Like, vividly hallucinating nothing else in the world exists other than this book. And I did finish it in a whole day. Like, oh my god, it was so good. But the middle bits of it were kind of like, oh, this is middle book syndrome. This is a little concerning. We're just learning new things and not progressing the plot along, really. Nothing is happening. We're just investigating. And then it happened. And it's taken everything in me to finish what I'm currently reading and not pick up the toll. And I almost cried at the end of this. If you have this one and you're liking it, you're like halfway through, I'm like, oh, this is good, and you're liking this series, get the toll before you finish it so you can pick it up immediately, because that's what I should have done. I'm genuinely concerned for my health and well-being. Scythe is so good. I lent it out to somebody, I don't currently have it, because I was like, this is a book series you will like, and I was right, because it's kind of a conversation about, is death and dying by other people, like, is it okay? And it's just a conversation about, like, should we die and when should we give up and all this other stuff. And there's just like a lengthy conversation about utopia in the background while this other stuff is happening. But in the first one we follow 2 characters who are training to become the Scythes, which are the people who are legally allowed to kill people. One is Citra and one is, I don't remember his name, Rowan. So this is like the continuation on after the competition and the fallout of the competition and everything that happened. And oh my god, this world. I'm gonna have to reread this as soon as I'm done because I love it so much. Like, it's concerning. The next book I read was Soul Taken. I need to look at the cover so I remember which one this one is. This is book 13 in the Mercy Thompson series. This one's a lot about Wolf and his backstory, and I'm intrigued about it. I actually really want to reread this one specifically because I feel like I didn't absorb all the information that I needed to absorb to continue on. And this is, again, like number 13 in this series. I think there's only 14 out right now. 15 just got announced to be released next year, and there's going to be 20 in this series in total. So, like, I'm invested. This is a book that, like, if they ever made this into, like, a fantasy true crime, everybody would be obsessed. The main character is Mercy Thompson. She is a coyote shifter. Her father is Coyote, and she progressively, over the span of time, just attracts trouble, and things always happen around her, and she always has to deal with things like the Fae and the witches and other, like, just people around her that are also magical, and she goes through a lot of shit in this series, like trigger warnings for SA and lots of death and terrible, terrible thoughts, especially in Soul Taken, because her mate Adam, who is the alpha of a werewolf pack in the Tri-Cities area, he goes through a lot of shit in book 12, I think it is, with the witches, and he is suffering in this one, and she doesn't know how to help him. And he's also suffering in the last one. Like, there's just a lot of shit him going through mentally now. She's kind of like gone through all of her stuff, and we like low-key get reminded of it because it sticks with you, right? But Adam is having a really difficult time in this one. So I appreciate that we're like, yes, the big strong werewolf has stuff to deal with. This is great. But I love this series, and I should reread it. I want to reread a lot of stuff. Is that bad? The next book I read, I actually DNF'd. And I think I got 50 pages in before I gave up. And that is Seraphina by Rachel Hartman. This was not it for me. If I would have read this when I was 14, I would have been all for it. But people who are half dragons and hiding it, and the relationship she had with her father and just kind of like all the political shit that it just immediately threw you into, I was not here for it. I didn't have the mental capacity to learn anything, and it all was just very confusing to me, so it was not the book for me, and that's not its fault. The next book I read was Chainsaw Man Volume 5. I don't have a whole lot to say about this. I gave it 4 stars. Do I remember anything? Probably not. I think I've exited the... Yeah, this is like after the show, I think, is what happens. Correct me if I'm wrong. Season 1 of the show ends, so this is like afterwards. So we're just kind of setting up the next arc, I feel like, and what happened here. I don't recall. It's been a hot minute, but I gave it 4 stars. I obviously really liked it. Okay, I must correct my earlier thing for this next book. The next book I read was Cry Wolf by Patricia Briggs as well, and I started this one because it's the first in this series, because Soul Taken is the 13th and the last one. The 14th just got announced for the Mercy Thompson series. I was wrong. This is the last one. So I picked up Cry Wolf because I was like, I need more Patricia Briggs Shifter era. And then I realized that Cry Wolf takes place in the same universe, just with other characters. So Mercy Thompson grows up in a werewolf pack, and this is about people in her original werewolf pack, and I loved it. 4 stars. It was amazing. There is technically a reading order to read these in tandem, to read like Moon Called and then something else, Cry Wolf. Like they're very in tandem, these 2 series, and I had no idea. So that is why I'd like to reread them, because I would like to reread them together. Cry Wolf follows a girl, Anna, who is a new werewolf. She's only been a werewolf for 3 years, and she's been part of this pack that has just been abusing her, basically. And they do that because she is an Omega, and she is kind of outside the pack laws. She doesn't really have to listen to alphas, so she's kind of a danger, but also she calms everybody down, so they kind of need her also. She gets rescued, like a White Knight rescue, by one of the leader of the North American packs. His name is Bram. He's the Marok. His son comes and rescues Anna, and it's like a princess fairy tale, but not really. There's a lot of trauma to deal with, and I love this series so far. I'm like a couple books in now. I love it. It's great. Next up, we have another 4-star read, and that is Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. I tried to read this a couple of years ago via audiobook, and I was like, no, I need to physically read this, and I was correct. I physically read, I think, the first half, and then I listened to the audiobook the last half, and physically reading it is the way to go, okay? I went into this expecting like a world of like magical books and magical library, and it definitely has that at the beginning, but it kind of fades away by the end of it, and it's less magical by the end of it and more political. The main character, whose name I do not remember, Elizabeth, is just kind of like suffering the whole time, and the guy that she kind of asked to help her, she kind of just like puts herself into this guy's care and then like makes him fall in love with her. Not really makes him fall in love with her. They both fall in love together, but she's just like, you're gonna help me. Fuck you, basically. And I was kind of uncomfortable with that. I'm like, you gotta figure out your way in this world. I don't know. She wasn't a strong female character, in my opinion. She's very dependent on others, and that kind of just like threw me off a little bit. So that's why it was 4 stars, but everything else about it was like amazing and awesome. And I did like the magic system in here. I did like the magical books and grimoires, and the guy, his house, what is his house and his name? I don't remember his name now. It's Thorn Manor. His house is amazing. I love his house, and I love the demons that they tie themselves to. What a cool concept. And now, last but certainly not least for October, we have Vampires of El Norte by Isabel Cairns. I'm pretty sure that's how you say her name. But this was an August 2023 book of the month, and I went into this knowing that it was historical fiction about the war between Mexico and Texas, and like trying to steal people's land and everything. And I knew that. What I didn't know is that the vampires are not just a metaphor for white people being murdery, and there's actually vampires in here. So I very much appreciated that. I was very excited about that. White people using vampires? Yes, great. This was fantastic. It was also very much, and above all, a romance story between the 2 main characters, which is Nestor and Nina, and they are so cute. The miscommunication that happens at first, I was like, oh, please don't let this last, but it didn't. Nestor made sure that it didn't, and I applaud him for that. Man of the year. Like, genuinely so good. I love this couple. I love this whole story. it was adorable and cute, and I'm pretty sure there's parts in Spanish, and I need to go back and like reread it and figure it out because I don't know Spanish. Disappointed in myself? Yes. Anywho, that was October. I did pretty good for October, I think. 1 DNF and a lot of other stuff. Oh yeah. Vampires of El Norte, this was 5 stars. So, I rated everything pretty much really high. Love that for me. Now, on to November. November's theme was teal, blue, and yellow. As you can see, I didn't read a whole lot. I was trying to write, and then shit hit the fan, and I was in Vancouver for some of it, so like not a whole lot got read, and that's okay. I was in Vancouver, shit hit the fan. I didn't even finish, I didn't write any authors' names in here. Like, that's how bad it is. And I didn't finish my reviews, oh my god. Okay, I have to fix that later. Anywho, starting off strong, I read Alpha and Omega, which is the 0.5 before Cry Wolf, and learned how Anna and, I don't remember his name, the guy met. What is their mate's name? He's very important. Charles? I'm gonna say his name is Charles, but I could be wrong. We learned how they met and what happened when he came and found her with her abusive pack, and it was really short and sweet, and I liked it. And then I gave that 4 stars, and then I read Hunting Ground, which is book 2, and I gave that one 4 stars. This one was fun because they're getting a bunch of packs together to talk about how they can break the news to the human public that werewolves exist. Keep in mind, the Fae have already done this successfully, kind of, but the werewolves haven't, and they're getting to a point where too many people are turning werewolves and too many people are dying because they can't handle it, and they are being labeled as murders. Technically they are, but they need to like bring awareness to the public, like, hey, this is a danger out there now for you. So this is a bunch of packs getting together, like trying to come up with a plan to do that and spread that information. Obviously the Omega goes there to calm everybody down, that's why Anna's there, and it's so good. I loved this book. Gave it 4 stars. Amazing. The next book I read I also gave 4 stars to, and it is Mysteries of Thorn Manor by Margaret Rogerson. This is the like 1.5 book after Sorcery of Thorns. It's not meant to be a duology. This is like the tiniest little book you ever did see. It's cute and adorable, and I actually like this better than the main one. This was the magical grimoire solving magic problems inside Thorn Manor because it's having a hissy fit type book that I thought the original one was going to be, so I love this a lot more. I think I gave it like 4.5 on Storygraph, but unsure. 10 out of 10, amazing. I'm gonna actually just like, ooh, put it there. This next book was the only 5-star I gave out, and it is Stone Cold Touch by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is the sequel to White Hot Kiss. Oh my gosh. Like, don't even get me started. This is that middle book where they try to convince you that the main character is interested in the second love interest, who's the good guy boy next door, aka Zane, when she's really not. She's really not. She's into Roth, and we all know it. Is his name Roth or Ross? I don't recall. Anyways, Layla is half warden, half demon, and she has figured out who her parents are in this book and trying to figure out what her powers and abilities are because they're changing from what they were when she was younger. And before she learned all this information, Zane is a warden, which is basically like a gargoyle type angel deal, and Roth is a high level demon from hell, and typical boy next door versus bad boy love interest triangle, and I'm here for it. I'm here for this. This is like one of my favorite series of all time now. And yes, that is cheesy. Next up, I read This Savage Song by Victoria Schwab. I'm trying to get all the Victoria Schwab in, all of the Dark Academia in. This is really good. I was not prepared for what this book was actually about, and it is actually about this guy August Flynn, who is a monster and he wants to be human, and Kate Harker is a human, and her dad is in charge of like all the monsters in their city. They live in this city that's secluded from the rest of the world because monsters exist there and not anywhere else. They can't go past the city because there's just this waste in there. But August Flynn loves playing the violin, and every time he plays the violin, he basically ends up murdering people and like eating their essence, I want to say. It's kind of crazy. But he's a really high-level monster. There's only like 3 of them to ever exist, which are his siblings, and they only are created from massive acts of like tragedy. And there's just so much conflict in here. It's like so freaking good. I can't even. Oh, I did not expect any of that. But I loved it, and I gave it 4 stars. The next book I read Don't laugh. It's fair game, also by Patricia Briggs. This is the third book in this series, and in the Alpha and Omega series. And in this one, we learn more about Anna being an Omega. We learn a lot more history about one of the guys in the Marax pack who had an Omega as a mate, and this witch that decided to kill his mate and make her basically a puppet. And it's really, really terrifying. Actually, this one, a lot of trigger warnings. Please look them up before you read it. This series is a lot heavier, I feel like, than the Mercy Thompson series, but they both deal with so many terrible things. Like, you gotta look up trigger warnings before you start it, but I'm having a good time. And the next book, number 7, and the last book in this video, I read Toil and Trouble, Occult Women in History. I didn't write down the full title, I'm sorry. But this is very fun, very short. I did not give it a rating because it's a nonfiction, and I typically don't do that. But it's literally just a history book about how women shaped occult and witchcrafty things. And it was very interesting. I accidentally read this. It was not my intention to read this, but I enjoyed it nonetheless. It was very fun, very interesting, and if you want to learn more about the occult, I suggest you give it a gander. It's on Audible, so you can just get it. That's where I got it by accident. I thought it was something else, but here we are, and I read it, and it was pretty good. So those were the books that I read in October and November, which is a lot. I feel like I've talked way too much, and I'm gonna hate editing this. So let's pick out favorites. I'm gonna go for November. Hunting Ground was my favorite, which is wild because I rated Stone Cold Touch 5 stars, but I think overall Thunderhead is my favorite. This one's just the best. You guys gotta hop on this train. Believe me. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please let me know what your favorites for October and November were, and I will see you all in the next video. Goodbye!